On a freezing city night, a billionaire CEO noticed a homeless girl who didn't beg, didn't speak. She only watched the world pass by with eyes full of pain and strength. One small act of kindness changed both their lives forever, and neither of them was ready for what love would demand. The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that crept through expensive coats and settled deep into the bones. The city lights glittered arrogantly, reflecting off glass towers and polished cars, as if mocking anyone who didn't belong to that glowing world. Ethan Cross belonged to it completely. Ethan Cross was the CEO of Cross Global Enterprises, a man whose name alone could silence boardrooms. At 36, he had everything society defined as success: power, money, influence. His schedule was measured in minutes, his life in profit margins. Emotions were inefficiencies. Relationships were distractions. He had learned that lesson early, after loss had carved a permanent distance into his heart. That night, Ethan stepped out of his black luxury sedan after a late board meeting that had drained the last bit of warmth from him. The driver asked if he wanted to head home. Ethan shook his head. "I'll walk," he said. The driver hesitated but nodded. The car disappeared into traffic, leaving Ethan alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by the city's restless breathing. As he walked, his thoughts remained cold and mechanical: quarterly reports, hostile takeovers, an upcoming merger that would make headlines. He barely noticed the people around him. He never did, until he saw her. She was sitting on the sidewalk near a closed cafe, knees pulled to her chest, wrapped in a thin, worn-out jacket that was no match for the night. Her hair was dark, tangled by wind and neglect, falling loosely around her face. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They weren't pleading. They weren't desperate. They were quiet. She stared ahead, not at him, not at anyone, just at the street, as if she were watching life happen without her permission to join. There was pain there, unmistakable pain. But beneath it, something else. Strength. Awareness. Intelligence. Ethan slowed his steps, without realizing it. He had seen homeless people before, countless times, in countless cities. Usually he felt nothing. Tonight was different, and that disturbed him. He stopped a few feet away. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm but distant, as if he were asking out of obligation rather than concern. The girl turned her head slowly. Her eyes met his, sharp and observant. She didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. As all right as someone freezing on concrete can be. It wasn't sarcasm. It was a fact. Ethan wasn't used to being spoken to like that. No fear. No flattery. No expectation. He nodded once. "You're cold." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "Yes," she said. That's usually how winter works. Something about her dry honesty unsettled him. "My name is Ethan," he said, surprising himself. He rarely offered his name to strangers. She studied him for a moment. "I didn't ask," she replied, then added. "But I'm Lily." There was a pause. Cars passed. Somewhere, laughter echoed from a restaurant doorway. Ethan glanced at the thin backpack beside her. "Have you eaten?" Lily hesitated, then shook her head. "Not today." The words were simple, but they hit harder than any corporate loss ever had. "There's a place open around the corner," Ethan said. "I can get you something warm." "Food." "Coffee." Her eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but calculation. "And then what?" she asked. "Then nothing," he replied. "You eat. That's it." She searched his face, as if trying to find the catch. Finding none, she slowly stood, wobbling slightly as her legs adjusted. "Okay," she said. "But I'm not going anywhere else." "I didn't ask you to," Ethan replied. They walked side by side, an unlikely pair. People glanced at them, some curious, some judgmental. Ethan noticed for the first time how sharply society divided people by clothing alone. Inside the cafe, warmth wrapped around them. Lily flinched slightly, like someone used to comfort. Ethan ordered soup, bread, and tea. When the food arrived, Lily didn't rush. She ate carefully, gratefully, but with dignity. No greed. No shame. "You're not like the others," Ethan said quietly. She looked up. "Others? People on the street," he clarified. Her jaw tightened. "We're not all the same." "I know," he said. And for the first time, he realized how little he truly knew. After she finished, Ethan paid and stood. "You shouldn't sleep outside tonight," he said. "It's going to drop below freezing." Lily's eyes hardened. "I don't go to shelters." "Why?" "Because not all danger wears suits," she said flatly. That struck something deep inside him. "There's a hotel across the street," Ethan said after a moment. "I can get you a room. No strings." She stared at him, truly stared now. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan opened his mouth and stopped. Why was he? "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't think you should freeze to death because the world failed you." Something shifted in her expression. Not trust. Not yet. But curiosity. "Just one night," she said. "After that, I'm gone." Agreed. At the hotel, Ethan booked the room under his name. Lily watched everything closely, memorizing exits, habits. Survival had taught her caution. At the door, she hesitated. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I won't," Ethan replied. "Good night, Lily." She nodded. "Good night, Ethan." As he walked away, something heavy settled in his chest. A feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. Concern. That night, Ethan lay awake in his penthouse, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the image of a girl with strong eyes and no place in the world. He realized, with quiet fear, that meeting Lily was not an accident. It was the beginning of something that would tear down everything he thought he understood. And Lily, alone in a clean bed for the first time in months, stared at the ceiling too, wondering why a man from the highest floors of the city had looked at her like she mattered. Neither of them slept. Because some encounters don't let you rest, Lily woke before dawn. She always did. The habit was carved into her body, deeper than memory. On the streets, sleep was never complete. It was a series of half-conscious moments interrupted by noise, danger, and instinct. Even now, wrapped in clean sheets with a hum of quiet luxury around her, her eyes opened the moment the city outside shifted its rhythm. For a few seconds, she panicked. The ceiling was unfamiliar. Too smooth. Too white. The air smelled clean, not like dust or damp concrete. Her heart raced as she sat up quickly, fists clenched, ready to run. Then she remembered. The cafe. The soup. The man in the dark coat who didn't look at her with pity or hunger. The hotel room. Ethan. She exhaled slowly and looked around. Everything was untouched. She had slept fully clothed, shoes neatly placed by the door, backpack within arm's reach. Old habits didn't disappear overnight. Lily stood and walked to the window. The city looked different from up here. Softer. Less cruel. Morning light reflected off glass buildings, painting the streets gold. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to belong to that world. Then she shook her head. Belonging was dangerous. She showered quickly, flinching at the warmth at first, then letting it sink into her aching muscles. She stared at herself in the mirror afterward, barely recognizing the girl staring back. Clean hair. Clear eyes. Still tired, but alive. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Lily froze. "Lily." Ethan's voice came through the wood. Calm. Controlled. She approached cautiously and opened the door just enough to see him standing there, coffee in one hand, a small paper bag in the other. He looked different in the daylight, less intimidating, more human. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept either. "I brought breakfast," he said. "If you want it." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. "You didn't have to." "I know," he replied. They sat at the small table near the window. Lily ate quietly. Ethan watched her, not in the way men sometimes did, but with curiosity, as if she were a question he couldn't solve. "You're leaving today," he said. "Yes." "Do you have somewhere to go?" She met his gaze evenly. "I always do." He knew that wasn't an answer. "You're intelligent," Ethan said. "That's obvious. You speak like someone who's been educated." Lily stiffened. "People don't stop being intelligent when they lose everything." "I didn't mean it that way." "I know," she said softly, "but most people do." Silence stretched between them. "What happened?" Ethan asked gently. Her fingers tightened around the cup. "That's not a small question. I won't push." She considered him for a long moment. "I used to have a life," she said finally. "A normal one. I was studying literature. I loved words. Stories. I thought if I understood people well enough, nothing could truly surprise me. And then?" Ethan asked. "And then I trusted the wrong person," she said. "And the system that was supposed to protect me decided I wasn't worth the trouble." Her voice didn't shake. That was what scared him most. Ethan leaned back, jaw tight. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Lily said. "You didn't do it." He wanted to argue. Wanted to say that men like him, systems built by people like him, were exactly what failed people like her. But he stayed silent. When she finished eating, Lily stood. "Thank you. For everything." "You could stay longer," Ethan said. "A few days. Get back on your feet." She shook her head. "If I stay, I'll start believing this is real." "And that would be bad?" "Yes," she said honestly. "Because when it disappears, it hurts more." She slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked toward the door. "Lily," Ethan said. She turned. "If you ever need help, real help, this is my card," he said, placing it on the table. "No conditions." She looked at it but didn't pick it up. "People like you don't give things without expecting something." "People like me?" he echoed. "The rich," she said simply. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Not this time." She studied him, searching for arrogance, entitlement, anything. Finding none, she picked up the card and slipped it into her pocket. "Goodbye, Ethan." "Goodbye, Lily." He watched her disappear into the elevator, feeling something unfamiliar twist inside his chest. Loss. The following days should have swallowed him whole, meetings, calls, decisions worth millions. But Lily lingered in his thoughts, distracting him in ways nothing ever had. He found himself walking the same streets at night, looking. A week passed before he saw her again. She was sitting outside a public library this time, reading. Ethan stopped in his tracks. She looked up and recognized him instantly. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly masked. "You followed me?" she asked. "No," he said honestly. "I walk here often." "That's a lie." He almost smiled. "Fine. It's a coincidence I hoped for." She closed the book. "You shouldn't get used to this." "I'm not," he replied. "I just wanted to know you're alive." "I am." "You don't look well." She shrugged. "That's subjective." Ethan sat down beside her, ignoring the stares of passers-by. "What are you reading?" "Virginia Woolf," she replied. She understood loneliness. That she did. Lily glanced at him sharply. "You've read her?" "Yes." "That doesn't fit your image." "What image is that?" "Cold. Untouchable. Rich men don't read about lonely women." Ethan exhaled. "You think money protects you from loneliness?" She didn't answer. They talked for hours that night. About books. About the city. About nothing and everything. Lily laughed, quietly at first, then freely. Ethan realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd made someone laugh without trying. Over the following weeks, their meetings became unspoken agreements. A coffee, a walk, a conversation that blurred the lines between two worlds. And slowly, dangerously, something began to grow. Not desire. Connection. Ethan started questioning things he'd never doubted. Why power mattered. Why he'd built walls instead of bridges. Lily, against her better judgment, started believing that maybe not all kindness came with a price. But the city was watching, and worlds that different never collide without consequences. Neither of them noticed the whispers beginning, or the eyes following Ethan when he walked beside a homeless girl like she belonged there. The rumors didn't start loudly. They never did. They began as glances held a second too long, as pauses in conversations when Ethan walked into a room, as subtle shifts in tone that only someone as observant as he was could detect. His assistant started asking more questions. His driver mentioned unfamiliar cars parked across the street at odd hours. And then there were the articles, harmless at first, barely a paragraph buried in business columns. CEO's unusual public appearances raise eyebrows. Ethan ignored them. He had ignored worse. But Lily noticed. She always noticed. They were sitting on the steps of an old theater one evening, sharing fries from a paper cup. The city buzzed around them, alive and indifferent. Lily watched two women pass by, whispering, eyes flicking toward Ethan's tailored coat, then down to her worn shoes. "They're watching you," she said quietly. "They always do," Ethan replied. "Not like this." He followed her gaze and sighed. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me," Lily said. Ethan turned to her. "Why?" "Because I don't want to be another thing they use against you." "You're not a thing." She flinched. "That's not how they see me." Silence settled between them, heavy and uncomfortable. "You could come inside," Ethan said after a moment. "There's an apartment near my office. You'd be safe. Warm." Lily shook her head immediately. "No." "Why not?" "Because then it becomes real," she said. "And real things can be taken away." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Lily, you're not invisible. You're choosing to suffer because you think pain is safer than hope." Her eyes flashed. "Hope is dangerous." "I know," he said softly, "but so is freezing to death." She stood abruptly. "You don't get to decide what danger I choose. I'm not trying to control you. Then stop trying to save me." The words cut deeper than he expected. "I'm not trying to save you," Ethan said, standing as well. "I'm trying to stand with you." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something cracked in her expression. "People don't stand with people like me," she whispered. "They leave. Or they hurt us." "I won't." "You can't promise that." "I can promise to try." Lily turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. Trying isn't enough. She walked off into the crowd before he could stop her. That night, Ethan returned to his penthouse and stared at the city below, realizing how small all his success felt. He could buy buildings, companies, influence, but he couldn't convince one wounded woman that she was worth staying for. The next morning, his board convened an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense, polite in the way only powerful people could manage. Charts glowed on screens. Coffee went untouched. "We need to talk about your image," one board member said carefully. "My image," Ethan repeated. "There are concerns," another added. "Public perception. Investors are uneasy." "Because I talked to someone who doesn't have an address?" Ethan asked coldly. "Because she's homeless," a third man said. "And you're the face of a multi-billion-dollar corporation." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "So this is about optics. This is about risk." "She's not a risk," Ethan snapped. "You don't know who she is," the man replied. "That's exactly the problem." Ethan stood. "This conversation is over." "It's not," the chairman said. "You need to distance yourself. Immediately." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Or what?" "Or we reconsider your leadership." The words hung in the air like a threat wrapped in silk. Ethan walked out without another word. He went straight to the streets. He searched for Lily for hours, by the library, the cafe, the theater. She was nowhere. Panic crept into his chest, unfamiliar and unwelcome. He found her just after midnight, sitting under a bridge, sketching by the light of a flickering lamp. Relief hit him so hard his knees nearly buckled. "Lily," he said, breathless. She looked up, startled. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." She closed her notebook. "Did you come to tell me they were right?" "Right about what?" "About me ruining your life." Ethan crouched in front of her.
No.
"I came to tell you they tried." Her eyes widened slightly. "They want me to walk away," he continued. "From you. From this." And I said no." Something in Lily's expression softened, then hardened again. "They'll destroy you. They can try." She shook her head. "You don't understand. People like me don't win these battles." "This isn't a battle," Ethan said. "It's a choice." She laughed bitterly. "That's easy to say when you have choices." The words stung because they were true. Ethan hesitated, then said, "There's something I haven't told you." Her grip tightened on the notebook.
What?
"I didn't grow up like this," he said. "But I didn't grow up safe either." She waited. "My mother was sick. Mentally. My father left when I was 10. We lost everything. We were homeless for a year." Lily stared at him. "I learned how quickly the world looks away," Ethan continued. "I learned that if you don't become powerful, you become invisible." She swallowed. "Then why do you care now?" "Because I recognize that look in your eyes," he said. "The one that says you're bracing for the worst, because you don't believe the best is allowed to stay." Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. "I can't be your weakness." "You're not," he said. "You're my reminder." She stood slowly. "I need time." "I'll wait." "For how long?" "For as long as it takes." They stood there, under concrete and shadows, two lives colliding in a space neither belonged. Unseen by them, a camera lens clicked quietly from across the street. And the next morning, the city woke up to a headline that would change everything. The headline spread faster than the morning traffic. "Billionaire CEO secretly involved with homeless woman." The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Ethan crouched under a bridge. Lily, sitting beside him, her face half turned away. The contrast alone was enough to ignite outrage, fascination, and judgment all at once. By noon, the internet had decided who Lily was. A gold digger. A con artist. A distraction. A mistake. Ethan saw the article during a meeting he no longer cared about. His phone buzzed nonstop. Board members, investors, media outlets, people who had never once asked how he was doing now demanding explanations. He didn't read the comments. He went straight to Lily. She already knew. He found her near the river, standing perfectly still, watching the water move as if it might carry her away if she stared long enough. Her shoulders were tense, her hands clenched inside the sleeves of her jacket. "You shouldn't be here," she said without turning. "I'm exactly where I should be," Ethan replied. She turned then, eyes blazing. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "What they have done," he corrected. "They turned me into a headline," she said. "They stripped me down to a story they could sell." Ethan stepped closer. "I'm sorry. That doesn't fix it," she snapped. "This is why I didn't want this. This is why I told you to walk away." "I won't," he said firmly. "You don't get it," Lily said, her voice cracking despite her effort to stay composed. "You'll survive this. You have money, lawyers, power. I have nothing. And now I have eyes on me." He reached out, then stopped himself. "You have me." Her laugh was hollow. "That's exactly what terrifies me." Within hours, cross-global enterprises released a statement, carefully worded, cold, detached. It mentioned unverified personal matters and reaffirmed corporate values. It did not mention Lily. It did not mention humanity. By evening, Ethan was called in again. This time, there was no pretense. "You're stepping down," the chairman said. Ethan remained standing. I built this company. And now you're endangering it. Another man replied. You can take a leave.
Quietly.
Or we make this public in a way you won't like. Ethan smiled bitterly. You already did.
You chose this, the chairman said.
Now choose how ugly it gets. Ethan signed the papers without another word. When Lily found out, she didn't cry. She went numb. You gave up everything, she said later that night, sitting across from him in a quiet park. For me. I gave up a position, he replied. Not everything. She shook her head slowly.
You don't see it yet.
They'll come after me harder now. They won't touch you. They already have, she whispered. The next few days were brutal. Strangers recognized Lily on the street. Some mocked her. Some shouted questions. Others looked at her with pure contempt. Shelters turned her away to avoid attention. Even the library asked her not to linger. Ethan offered her the apartment again. This time, she accepted. Not because she wanted comfort, but because she was exhausted. The apartment was quiet. Safe. Too safe. Lily paced the rooms like a trapped animal. She barely slept. At night, she sat by the window, watching the city she once knew how to survive now feel hostile and alien. One evening, she finally spoke. There's something you don't know, she said, voice low. Ethan turned from the kitchen. About what? About why I ended up on the streets. He sat down slowly. You don't have to.
I do, she said.
Because if you're going to lose everything, you deserve the truth. She took a breath that trembled. I was assaulted, she said, by someone powerful, connected. When I reported it, the case disappeared. My scholarship was revoked. My housing followed. Friends stopped answering my calls. My family told me to stay quiet. Ethan felt something inside him fracture. They told me I was trouble, Lily continued, that I was ruining lives. So I left. I thought if I disappeared, the pain would stop. She laughed softly. Turns out, silence doesn't heal you. It just teaches you how small the world wants you to be. Ethan's hands shook. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because men with power don't like stories that remind them of what power does, she said. And because I didn't want you to see me as broken. He stood and crossed the room, kneeling in front of her. You are not broken. Her eyes filled. I feel like I am. He gently took her hands. Then let me be the proof that you're not. For the first time since they met, Lily let herself cry. Not quietly. Not politely. She cried with the force of someone who had carried too much alone for too long. Ethan held her, not as a savior, not as a protector, but as a man choosing to stay. Outside, the city kept spinning. Inside, something fragile began to heal. But healing attracts attention. And the truth Lily carried was about to collide with a world that had buried it once before. The city had a way of pretending it had moved on. The headlines faded. Another scandal replaced theirs. Another powerful name fell. Another distraction rose. To the world, Ethan Cross stepping down as CEO became old news within weeks. To the board, he was a liability neatly removed. To investors, a lesson in what happened when power mixed with sentiment. But inside the quiet apartment, time moved differently. Lily began sleeping through the night again. Not every night. Some nights, she still woke up shaking, breath caught in her throat, memories clawing their way back. But now, she wasn't alone when it happened. Ethan never asked questions in the dark. He simply sat beside her until the shaking stopped, until the present felt solid again. They learned each other slowly, carefully, like two people relearning how to trust the ground beneath their feet. Ethan cooked badly, but enthusiastically. Lily laughed at him more than she meant to. She started sketching again, filling page after page with faces. People on the street, people in suits, people caught between worlds. Ethan watched her draw, with a quiet awe that surprised him. You see things others don't, he said once. She shrugged. When you're invisible long enough, You learn how to observe. He understood that better than he wanted to admit. One afternoon, Lily received an email. She stared at the screen for a long time before speaking. It's from an investigative journalist, she said. She wants to talk. Ethan's body tensed. About what? About me, Lily replied. About what happened. About the man who hurt me. He stood slowly. You don't have to do this. I know, she said. But I want to. Fear and determination lived side by side in her eyes. They met the journalist in a quiet office with windows that looked out over the city. Lily told her story, every detail she'd been taught to bury. Names, dates, documents she'd kept hidden in her backpack for years, afraid and ashamed and unsure if they mattered. The journalist listened. Carefully, respectfully. This isn't just your story, she said when Lily finished. It's bigger. And it's not over. When the article was published, it wasn't gossip. It was truth. The man Lily had accused years ago was no longer untouchable. Others came forward. Patterns emerged. The system that had silenced her before was forced into the light. This time, the world listened. There were hearings, investigations, consequences. Ethan watched it all from the sidelines, holding Lily's hand through every headline, every interview, every moment her past resurfaced. He never spoke for her. He never stood in front of her. He stood beside her. Public opinion shifted in a way no one had predicted. Lily was no longer a rumor. She was a survivor. And Ethan was no longer just a disgraced CEO. He was the man who walked away from power and chose integrity. Job offers came quietly. Boards reached out. Companies wanted him back. He turned most of them down. Instead, he started something smaller, something real. A foundation. Legal support for women who had been silenced. Housing programs designed by people who had lived on the streets, not by executives who'd never slept on concrete. Lily helped shape it. Her insight mattered. Her voice mattered. One evening months later, they walked through the city together. The same streets where they'd first met felt different now. Not kinder, not perfect, but honest. They stopped near the closed cafe, where it had all begun. It's strange, Lily said softly. I used to think love was about being rescued. Ethan looked at her. And now? Now I think it's about being seen, she said. And still being chosen. He reached for her hand. I choose you. She smiled. Not the guarded smile she'd worn when they first met, but one that reached her eyes. And I choose you, she said. They didn't need promises carved in stone. They didn't need approval from a world that had already failed them once. What they had built was quieter, stronger. Love, born not from wealth or power, but from shared humanity. From one cold night. From one simple act of kindness. And from two people brave enough to believe that dignity, once recognized, could never truly be taken away. Sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with luxury or perfection, but with a moment of humanity the world almost ignores. Ethan and Lily's story reminds us that real love isn't about status, money, or saving someone. It's about seeing them, standing beside them, and choosing compassion when it costs you something. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Kindness can change a life, but courage can change the world. And love, when it's real, doesn't lift one person above the other. It lifts them both together. Thank you for listening. If you believe in stories where humanity wins over power, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness creates the biggest change.